Recording in progress.
Good afternoon and welcome to the August 26, 2021 meeting of the Monterey Board of Library Trustees. We'll call the meeting to order, and before we get started, I wanted to go through a few logistical items. This is our first meeting as a so-called hybrid meeting of the Library Board, which basically means that people can participate either electronically, for example, through Zoom or the telephone, or they can come in person. And so I'd like to ask Francesca Garibaldi, our administrative assistant, to provide a little further information about how people can participate. Francesca.
Thank you, Chair Thompson. The City of Monterey is committed to the safe public attendance of its public meetings. Masks are required for all, regardless of vaccination status, except for those who are younger than 2 years old or have a medical condition that prevents wearing a mask. We ask that you please keep phones and device speakers muted in order to prevent audio interference and feedback with the hybrid meeting. As we carefully return to more normal activities, the City of Monterey seeks to continue to offer virtual methods for public participation options. Governor Newsom's executive order N 29-20 remains in effect, providing greater flexibility for agencies holding public meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic. If you aren't joining us in person here at the council chambers, there are two ways to virtually participate in library board meetings. One is by joining directly on Zoom Gov from your computer or mobile device, and the second is to join by calling into the meeting. To join the meeting on Zoom on your computer, smartphone, or telephone, use the link or phone number on the agenda at isearchmonterey.org. And since the meeting has started, you will find the agenda under the Recent tab. To join by telephone, dial toll-free 833-568-8864. Enter meeting ID 161-352-8864, followed by the pound sign. And if prompted to enter a participant ID, press pound. Detailed instructions on using Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. Lastly, to make a public comment when the time arises, you will be able to raise your Zoom hand virtually by pressing the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen, or if you are dialed in by phone, raise your hand by pressing *9. Public comments will be muted until it is their turn to speak, and I will call on each public speaker in the order of their hands raised. Please stay within a time limit that will be established for today's meeting, which will be 3 minutes. We will show using a countdown timer on the screen. If you are connected live on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. These public comments are also streamed live on the city's YouTube account, which is accessible at youtube.com/City of Monterey with an approximate 10-second delay, and on Comcast channel 25 with up to a 90-second delay. As always, we look forward to receiving public comment. Chair Thompson, I pass back to you.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Let's start with the roll call, please.
Trustee Joshi.
Present.
Trustee Felgu.
Present.
Trustee Petty.
Here.
Trustee Moreau.
Here.
And Chair Thompson.
Here and present as well. The next item, and by the way, I should highlight that as most of you can tell, the trustees are all participating virtually, and that's why they don't have masks on. The staff that are in the council chambers are masked, and again, any member of the public that wishes to join us in the council chambers needs to wear a mask. So before we start the regular part of the meeting, I wanted to take a few moments and in fact ask for a moment of silence in a minute in memory of Jean McComb. She passed away last week on August 18th. And as many of you know, she retired in December 2017 after a 35-year career of service to the Monterey Public Library. She did many, many things during that period of time, but she's probably most well known for starting and doing such a great job with the adult storytelling program that won many awards. And I certainly saw several of those myself, as I imagine many of you did. We're so grateful for her many contributions to the Monterey Public Library, and therefore I would like to ask that we have a moment of silence in her memory. Thank you very much. We'd also like to extend our condolences to her family, her friends, and her former coworkers. With that, I'd like to move on to the consent calendar on the regular agenda, which in this case is item number 1, the minutes of the July 22 board meeting, excuse me. Are there any questions or comments about the minutes? If not, Francesca, is there any public input on item number 1?
No, there is not.
Thank you very much. I'd entertain a motion then to approve the consent calendar of item number 1.
So move.
Second.
Any further comment or discussion? Please call the roll.
Trustee Joshi,
Approve.
trustee Moreau,
Approve.
trustee Petty. Oh, you're muted.
Bob is giving an indication of he approves.
Thumbs up, approve.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Falguth
Approve.
and Chair Thompson.
Yes. With that, we'll move on to the public comment section of our agenda, which is an opportunity for members of the public to comment on any items that are not on the agenda for today's meeting. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak and address the board at this time?
And as always, we do encourage members of the public to join our meeting via Zoom Gov. You will be connected live in real time to the meeting or here in the council chambers. To join by telephone, please dial toll-free 833-568-8864. Enter meeting ID 161-352-8864. If prompted to enter a participant ID, press pound. There are no public comments at this time.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Then we'll move on to the public appearance section of our agenda, which includes items 2 through 6. And we'll start with item 2, which is an update on the library and the Bookmobile reopening. Inga, could you provide an overview of the reopening status?
Sure. So as you know, we were very excited to reopen the library to the public after 500 days of closure to the public. Of course, during those 500 days, staff were still delivering services, but members of the public weren't able to enter the library. So on July 27th, we opened, and that first day we had about 430 people enter the building. We are open now 5 days a week instead of the previous 7 days per week, and 40 hours a week as opposed to the previous 52. So that's a reduction of about 22%. We've taken a number of measures to make the facility safe for people to re-enter. We have a new air filtration system or new air filters and additional airflow in the building. And we have a person who cleans twice a day. And we've reduced the quantity of seating and also the number of computers available to help reduce crowding. And so we have about a reduction of about 46% in the number of computers that are available. Also, we don't currently have laptops available because there was an issue getting them to be compatible with our printing system because they were updated to Windows 10. So our ISD department is working on that. We've had a few requests, but overall, we've had an average during the first 18 days that we were open of about 400 people a day, and that's about half of how many people attended previously. So I think people are being cautious about using the library, but we are finding that people are using the library, and we also are still providing sidewalk service 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, and the attendance there has been very low, but we know that a few people have been using that as well. Our new RFID system, which we'll talk about later, is able to give us all kinds of interesting statistics about traffic in the building, and that's going to help us with future plans for staffing and library hours. We have remodeled our library desk based on the fact that we have reduced staff now. And now just 2 staff members are available at a time out at our desk as opposed to up to 4 previously. Customer responses have been very positive for the most part. I haven't heard any negative remarks from the public. Most people are just so grateful that the library is open again. We have lots of expressions of thanks for having provided sidewalk service during our closure, but people are really happy to get back in the building and to search for materials themselves or get staff to help them find materials. Let's see, our programs. So we haven't started indoor programming yet. Instead, we're still continuing virtual programming, which for adults has remained very popular. Right now we have 2 series going on, three series. We have a weekly mindfulness program on Wednesdays. And then we have a history series once a month with historian Tim Thomas, who brings in a different guest to interview each month. And then we have a genealogy series with genealogist and librarian Kathy Nielsen, and those have both been very popular. And we're about to launch another Steinbeck series. Last year we did Cannery Row Days, and we had a lot of lectures and talks and book discussion about Cannery Row. It was the 75th anniversary of the novel Cannery Row by Steinbeck. This year we're going to do a similar series, and it's going to focus on Sweet Thursday, which was sort of the sequel that Steinbeck wrote to Cannery Row, and it takes place after World War II and after the crash of the sardines. So we'll have some interesting talks and discussions coming up starting in September, and it runs through the beginning of November. But for programs in person, we're not holding them in the building yet, but we are going to start a book discussion group. And not surprisingly, we're going to start off with Sweet Thursday. And it's going to be held upstairs in the library on our outdoor terrace. And then we also have a storytime program that started up again, and that's held on the lawn over by Colton Hall. So that's going on as well. And then our Bookmobile is back on the road. And again, people are just so grateful to have it available. The Bookmobile is going to 4 stops a week, and it used to go to 8. It's going to 2 senior residences. That's Merrill Gardens in the Park Lane. And then it also goes to the La Mesa housing area. And then it also goes to Montecito Park. And our Bookmobile coordinator provided some information in the report that's before you. And just in general, people are delighted to have the Bookmobile again. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you very much for that thorough report, Inga. Do any trustees have clarification questions you'd like to ask? Marcia.
I just had a curiosity question. When we talked about the data that was being collected, you said that the average time spent in the library is 20 minutes. And I was trying to figure out how the technology can figure out what the average time spent in the library is, unless it can, I don't know, pick up your library card in your pocket when you come in and then figure it out when you come out, or anybody know?
What a great question. If David was here, I'm sure he'd have a ready answer for you. David is our technology specialist. But what I can tell you about the gates is that they count people coming in and they count people going out. So
And they also record the time of each event, right?
right, correct. So that's how they.
So my guess would be, if I could interrupt, that they'd simply take the average of all the entrance times and the average of all the exit times and compare the two. But that would just be my guess. Because I had the same question and I mentally thought that's how that must be how they do it.
Yeah, it was just a curiosity. And I guess my second question might be, are there plans to ask? I remember a while back we were talking about it, some sort of survey or something, and I know maybe it's too early, but are there plans to ask about things like the sidewalk service and the services that we're providing and what people would like? Or is that something down the road?
That is something that Trustee Felguth and I are going to work on, and that's those are the sorts of things we want to know about, and also people's comfort level with having programs indoors and so forth.
Mhm.
Yeah, stay tuned. We're going to be working on that. We wanted to have people have the experience of what we're offering currently before, and have, of course, staff get used to the current offerings before we survey folks and then change it up.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you.
Are there other questions at this point? Bob?
Yeah, let me lower my hand. There we go. Two things. Number one, with regard to the sidewalk service, I know that when we were talking about it months ago about whether to continue it and where and all of that, once we reopened the actual building, I know that one of the concerns was that with still very limited number of staff members on the job at any one point in time, they could be frequently interrupted, and then that would obviously disrupt their workday and how much they could do if they were having to get up and run to the front door and everything over and over again and back to the shelves where the books on hold are, and et cetera. You know, sort of, and we said, well, we'll keep it going, like everything we read suggested that libraries needed to do after having that as the primary way of checking out books at so many places like in Monterey. But, you know, the upside of keeping it available is that it's an additional service. And if it's true that not that many people are using it, I assume that means there are very few, and Kim could maybe verify this assumption. But if there aren't many people using it, then there aren't many interruptions in staff's ongoing work. And so it's not really a big thorn in our staff side if there aren't that many people, like every 5 minutes coming up and they have to, oh geez, I got to get up and go to the front door again. So I'm thinking that maybe if it's continually used at all and it's not a big hassle for staff because it's one of the lesser used services. And of course, this may change as the weather gets poorer too, but people may want to just run out and run back to their car. But I'm thinking that it might be a good thing to continue and not measure, and in view of the fact that it's less interruptive of staff. So just an observation, and you know, we will see, but sort of a frame of reference from which to think about it. Also, with the approval of the chair, I was going to request that we move item 4 to be our next item, because it deals with the Bookmobile, and we were talking about the Bookmobile and all of the stops, and I was just thinking in terms of logical chronology, we could move current item 3 on RFID down 1 and move the Bookmobile calendar and stop schedule up 1, just to continue the conversation.
If no one else has an objection, I think that's fine. We can certainly do that. And Inga or Kim, did you want to provide any additional background on the sidewalk service and the degree to which it kind of limits the staff that are assigned to that? It may not be a lot of interruption with such little volume, but I assume it does kind of keep you chained to your workstation to some degree. So I wondered if you could address that a little bit further.
Sure, I could say a quick something on that. I definitely agree that it is pretty easy to get other work done while on shift. The caveat would be that the way it's set up, it's only certain desks that are in the vicinity for the people that could be assigned to cover those hours. So sometimes the availability can be tough if people, because there's like staggered schedules where some people don't come in until 11, or if somebody has a class visit or something else is going on, then it could become more problematic if we're trying to pull staff from other parts of the building.
Okay, thank you. Any other trustee questions at this point for clarification before we have public input? Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Just real quick, I wanted to ask Mary Jane if she was on the Bookmobile the day they went to Park Lane and we got that new patron signed up as a monthly donor.
No, I did not know that that donor was didn't come. He also came into the library, as I understand, a day or two before, because Inga had quite a wonderful conversation with him. But excellent question. No, I was not. I was there in spirit.
All right, you deserve a lot of credit, but you don't get any credit for that. Okay.
Yeah, she does deserve a lot of credit for a lot of other things, that's for sure. If there are no other questions of clarification, then Francesca, could we see if there's any public input on item 2?
Yes, for anyone who would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand on Zoom. If you are connected by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. At this time, there are no public comments, Chair Thompson.
Thank you very much, Francesca. So is there any further board discussion on this? It seemed like the major item that we've been discussing here a little bit is the sidewalk service. And I'd just like to add a comment that even though the volume is fairly low now, we don't know really what's going to happen with the COVID surge. And it seems to me we need to give it more time before we get serious about the policy issue of whether to continue it or not. It seems to me it's appropriate to continue it for a while. And if we are able to do the survey that Jennifer and Inga will be working on, that may be very helpful as well. And I don't know if Inga, if there's a way, or Kim for that matter, if there's a way to kind of query the people that are using the sidewalk service currently, about how important it is to them, or whether they would be comfortable going inside, or, if you have an opportunity for that kind of discussion to just get some ad hoc feedback from the people that are going there, would that be something that might be workable? Again, it wouldn't be a survey really, but it would just be some input that might be useful.
Yeah, I would say that at this point, a couple of people have been quite vocal that this is the only way that they're able to use the library at this time. But we could do a more comprehensive survey moving forward. And I don't know, as virus levels change and stuff, if people's opinions will change.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And somebody mentioned the weather too. I think Bob mentioned the weather could be an impact as well. So yeah, I think if the board is comfortable, I think we have a consensus that even though the volume is low, that we would continue the sidewalk service, not for any set period of time, but until we can do further evaluation of its cost effectiveness. Okay. Any other comments from the board? There's no real action required on this item. It's just to receive the report, but any further questions or comments? Okay, if not, thank you very much. And again, before we leave the item though, I did want to thank Inga and all the Monterey Public Library staff for everything you've done to reopen the library. It's a major undertaking, and we've done major changes in how we do business with a limited staff and new technology. And you've made it look fairly smooth, but I know there was a lot of difficulty and a lot of work that went into that. And I just wanted to publicly commend Inga and the entire library staff and volunteers as well that worked on many aspects of this. Just a great accomplishment to get it going again and going so smoothly. So thank you very much.
Yeah, if I might add,
Sure, go ahead.
Also, the library looks very nice. It's cleaned up, and the fact that it doesn't look as cluttered, it actually looks as if it had been renovated somehow. It just looks so nice. Maybe it's because we haven't been there for a while, but it really looks good. And a lot of people have said that in there.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And Harish.
Yeah, the library does look better lit. I remember going inside previously, it felt a little dingy. And now the lighting is better. It's brighter. It's much nicer to go in.
Very good. Very good. So thank you again, Inga, and library staff.
And Jim, thank you so much for mentioning the volunteers. So we really wouldn't have been able to reopen without the work that the volunteers did to help us prepare, but then also that they continue to do. So we're very much appreciative of our volunteers.
Certainly agree with that. But I also know that some staff, including the director, worked long hours to make it happen. So thank you. Then moving on, we've decided earlier that we're going to, instead of go to item number 3, we're going to do item 4 first, and then we'll come back to item number 3. So item number 4 is to approve the Bookmobile stops and holiday and closure schedule. And Inga, is there anything you'd like to add to the report on that, item 4?
Well, of course, the Bookmobile did start, it's on the road, so it has been operating this schedule, but this is the schedule that we propose for formal adoption. One of the things you'll see is that for the Bookmobile, every Tuesday, we go to 2 senior residences. And as a result, we're able to stock the Bookmobile, beef up the Bookmobile collection with materials we know that folks at those senior residences especially appreciate. And then every Thursday, we go to 2 locations that have lots of families. And so again, we're able to kind of stock the Bookmobile. We have these carts that can roll on and off easily on the Bookmobile. We're able to stock it with more children's materials and sort of family-oriented materials. Other than that, the other part of the report or proposal is what holidays to close. And I think that's fairly self-explanatory and pretty consistent with what we've done in the past. So thank you.
Very good. Any clarifying questions that any board members have at this point? Marcia and then Bob.
I was just wondering, I know that you have half the number of stops that you had before, and the last sentence says it's not known when the library will be able to expand, which we know. But I was wondering if there is a plan contingent on more people to add to the Bookmobile's stops to get it back to where it was, or is that just on hold until, and I know we have a phased in budget proposal for the next year and a half or so. Is it on there, or is it going to be after that sometime?
Well, the budget for the year just has the one regular part-time position for the Bookmobile, rather than what we previously had was a full-time position. And then the city council just approved our current fiscal year budget. We didn't wind up doing the 2-year budget. So there's the opportunity for the library board to think again about next year and see if it would make sense to bring back a full-time Bookmobile position and add some stops. So at this point, it's sort of on hold, but we want to be gathering information to see, are there other parts of the community that really need the Bookmobile to come back? Are we getting lots of community input on that? And we'll probably need to survey folks again to get that information as well.
Thank you.
Bob, I believe you had a question as well.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, Inga, on December 27th, which is a Tuesday, which in your text, it says that it would be a staff holiday for full-time and regular part-time who work a Tuesday through Saturday schedule, which is, I guess, that's the normal days that we're open now, but anyhow, but then down at the chart for the schedule, you say that it's going to be open. So is that inconsistent with each other? Or in other words, are we going to be open and it's not going to be a holiday for those people? Or is it going to be a holiday for them? And like it says in footnote 2, it's a holiday for them except for you. And I don't expect we're going to open the library with only one person, even you, on duty. So if you could clarify that for me, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. So we have a few options there. One is to have the library director work and part-time seasonal staff work, because unfortunately, they don't get holidays. So for them, they can work, and that's how we've staffed the library sometimes. We've also asked managers to work sometimes. And then more recently, we've given staff the option, if they want to work a holiday, then they get paid for the hours that they work in addition to the holiday pay. But the reason that this proposal has us opening that day, well, a couple of reasons. One is that that's an awfully long time to be closed. And so if we were closed on Tuesday, that would be 4 days in a row. And that's an awful long time for our library customers. And then also a lot of returned materials pile up and they have to be checked in anyway. So might as well plan to have staff there. And so that's one thing. And then I don't know, I forgot what my other point was, but anyway, I know that we try to be open the days that customers expect us to be open. So that's the kind of holiday where it already seems like, well, the Christmas happened over the weekend, so aren't you open by now, kind of a thing. Admission day is the other day that most folks don't remember admission day as a holiday, so we tend to be open that day as well.
So it appears that what you're saying is we would be open and we'll wait till closer to the 27th of that month to decide with whom we staff the place.
Correct.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other clarification questions? Harish?
It says Sunday, January 1st is a holiday, closed. Aren't we normally closed on Sundays these days anyway? I'm wondering why it was mentioned in particular.
Well, we're normally closed on Mondays as well, and I mentioned the Mondays also. So one reason to mention it is so that if our schedule does change and expand, because we used to be open 7 days a week, then we would have already decided about those days, the Sundays and Mondays. And another reason would just be most people wouldn't know what day of the week does January 1st, 2023 fall. So it's just safe to put it on there. And then we let people know it's a Sunday. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Any other clarifying questions? If not, Francesca, could you see if there's any public input on item number 4?
Yes, to make a public comment on Zoom, please raise your Zoom hand. If you are connected by phone, dial *9. When called upon, dial *6 to unmute yourself. Chair Thompson, there are no public comments at this time.
Thank you very much, Francesca. Is there any further board discussion or anybody want to offer a motion? Bob?
I move that we approve the 2 schedules that were presented in this item.
I'll second
Bookmobile
that.
and hours of operation.
And I'll second that.
So Bob makes the motion and Jennifer seconds the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Please call the roll.
Trustee Joshi,
Yes.
Trustee Moreau,
Yes.
Trustee Petty,
Yes.
Trustee Felguth,
Yes.
and Chair Thompson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Motion carries unanimously. And now we'll move back to item number 3, the final report from the ad hoc RFID committee. So I'd like Inga and Harish perhaps to make a few comments.
Sure, I'll kick it off and then Trustee Joshi can chime in. And then we did want to show a little video at the end for you that one of our staff members prepared. So making a list of milestones, I was surprised to realize that it's actually been almost a year since we first started talking about RFID, and now we're able to present you with the final report. So just as a reminder, we were able to fund the project through a number of donations, and no operating city funds were used for that. Well, it was mostly donations. And then we moved from originally considering the idea to considering an RFP and then learning about piggybacking contracts and working on that. And then back in April, we had our site visit from FE Technologies after we signed a contract in March. And then the tagging went with record speed. Thanks again to our staff, but also a wonderful team of volunteers and David Kuhn for organizing those volunteers. And to Trustee Joshi for sort of overseeing the whole thing. And then our gates were installed after some delays due to parts needing to come from China. And then finally we had it all installed so that we could open on July 27th. David and I had management console training on August 18th. And so now I am able to sit in my office and look at things like what's the average amount of time people spend in the library. And I'm sure all other kinds of fascinating things that I have yet to click on and open up and figure out what they mean. But anyway, it's such a change from previously with our gates where we had to actually go down and look at the count on the gate and write it down manually and do the math to see from one day to the next how many people had come into the building. Upcoming activities, I'm going to be interviewed by FE Technologies and their public relations team. And we're hoping to do some kind of event around the Internet Librarian Conference that's still in the works. And Trustee Joshi, what would you like to add?
I would. I was the first one, I think, to try out the new app.
Yes.
And it works quite well. If you do plan to use it, one thing to keep in mind is its camera is hyperactive. When you're trying to scan the barcode, if you get part of it, it'll immediately read that part and say, I can't find that item. So what I've learned to do is put my thumb on the barcode, line it up, and then remove the thumb, and then scans the whole thing. So that's just one comment. Otherwise, it works quite well. I've opened it from home and renewed an item, and that works. So all that is working really well.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for your work on this committee, Harish, and Inga and David for all the work to get it implemented. Shall we see the video at this point, Inga? Is this a good time?
Yes, Francesca will cue it up. It might be silent, we're not sure.
I hear a little music.
Stands for radio frequency.
We're thinking that maybe Kim can play it in a way that makes it audible. Kim?
Yes, 1 second. Let me try on my end. Sorry, Francesca did give me a heads up, but.
Well, while we take a moment for technical review here, wanted to just see if there were any other board questions of Inga or Harish. Marcia.
I have one about the app. Is it? I have the app. I couldn't get it working, but that was a while back. Is it really intuitive, or is there like a set of instructions on the wall or something so that people know how to do it?
It's a very basic app. It doesn't do everything that the library thing does. So it only does checkout, borrow, and renew.
Yeah, just to check out. But if you want to use it to check out books, there's something that tells you how to do it, or?
Yeah, there's a button that says borrow. There's one for account, one for borrow, and I think the third one is, let's see.
Okay, I'll try it again next time I'm
Yeah.
there.
Okay, thank you. Kim, do you think you might have it now?
I think so. Let's try it.
Okay. Very good.
RFID stands for radio frequency identification and is a system that uses electromagnetic fields to automatically identify and track tags attached to objects. The RFID tags the library uses consist of a small circuit that includes a tiny radio receiver and transmitter. This circuit is powered by the incoming radio waves from an RFID reader. When the RFID tag receives the proper signal, it responds by transmitting digital data that identifies the item the tag is attached to. Because the system uses radio waves, it doesn't require direct line of sight, unlike traditional barcode systems, and additionally, can have a greater flexibility in range. Every item in the library's collection now has an RFID tag like this attached to it. Before the tag is ready, it has to be encoded by a staff member. Encoding is the process of programming the relevant data into the tag. Once an item is both tagged and encoded, it is ready to circulate. Staff use these RFID pads to retrieve the data stored on items' RFID tags. Items placed on or directly above the pads will relay their encoded data to the pad, which will then relay it to the computer. The RFID tags store only information about the item, including barcode, owning library, and checkout status, but do not store any patron information, preserving our customers' privacy. If an item that has not been checked out passes within 24 inches of one of the new security gates, it will trigger the gate's alarm and simultaneously relay the data from the RFID tag to staff, so that it is simple to identify the exact item that set off the alarm. When items are returned inside the library, the new RFID-enabled smart bin automatically checks the items in. Staff then sort and process the returned materials using an RFID-enabled computer. When a customer is ready to check out an item, there are 3 ways to check out: via staff, via the self-check machines, and via the new Patron app. The Patron app is a new tool which allows customers to check out items from anywhere within inside the library building, simply by scanning the barcodes on the items. Our new RFID system from FE Technologies streamlines both the borrowing and returns process and moves Monterey Public Library forward into the 21st century.
Very nice video. Thank you very much. Inga, are we thinking of putting that video on the website?
We are, and I've talked to Nat about doing a press release to go out next week. And I wanted to publicly thank Carl Silvaca for putting that video together.
Yes, it was very good. Thank you. Could you also recognize the donors that were recognized in the video once again? Because it's as Bob has talked about before. Videos of of stray dogs and cats. You can get donations fairly easily, but getting donations for technology purposes is often much harder. So I particularly want to thank and appreciate the donors for this technology improvement that will improve our efficiency for years and years to come.
Yes, so we're very grateful to a couple who made a very generous donation that enabled us to do this project, and that's Richard Carr and Barbara Schilling. And we're thankful that they had the vision for how we could improve our services. And really, it's helped us, especially in this new pandemic environment. So
Thank you. Thank you very much, Inga. Are there other board clarifying questions at this point? If not, Francesca, could you see if there's any public comment on item number 3?
Yes, to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand, or if you are on telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. At this time, there are no public comments, Chair Thompson.
Okay, is there any further board discussion on this item?
I have a question.
Harish?
Are more people using the self-checkout now as a result of this? Or is that more a psychological thing for people?
that is a great question, and I don't have the answer yet, but I'll be able to look at our statistic reports and find out for you. So I hope so. We've tried to make the self-checks more prominent. So we'll see.
Very good. Any other questions? Bob?
I was just going to say, and we wouldn't look at the absolute number, we would look at the proportion, because if only about half as many people are walking through the building, but 99% of them, it might still not be anywhere near the amount that we had before, but a much greater proportion. So I think that would be the relevant statistic to look at. I'm curious how many, I mean, I've been in the library and I've used the self-checkout like machines, not the app on my phone, as easy as that is. So I'm curious how many people, maybe once we get more crowded, more people will use the telephone app.
Yeah.
Yes, one advantage of the telephone app is you don't have to stand in the line for it.
Yeah, that's right. You could just do it yourself.
Mhm.
That's right. Okay, any other comments? Jennifer?
Since we're making instructional videos and posting them up on the website and hopefully our Facebook page, maybe a quick little video on how to use the smart app on the phone might be another little project that could happen. I wouldn't think that one would even be as complex as the one that explained RFID in general, but a little brief tutorial would be great, or even a little handout would be wonderful.
It's a good suggestion. Any other comments or suggestions? If not, I would just like to make one concluding comment, which is to thank everyone involved in this project. It was horrible that the library was closed for 500 days, except for the sidewalk service, but I mean, closed to in-person visits. But it was wonderful that we were able to get everything going so that we get all the tagging done, get all the equipment installed, even though there were numerous delays, and have it ready to go by the time that we opened. And so my compliments to Harish, all the volunteers involved in the tagging, David, Inga, all the other library staff that have been involved in this project, because I think it's a great accomplishment. So thank you. If there's nothing else on that item, then let's move on to item number 5, which is a report on fund development activities for fiscal year 21 and approving the fund development plan for fiscal year 22. Inga, did you want to introduce this item, or shall we go directly to Mary Jane?
I would like to introduce Mary Jane. So, Mary Jane Perna will walk us through how we did with our fund development plan this year that's just ended, and what we're proposing for the year that's just started. And I would point out that ordinarily this report traditionally had come to you in September. Mary Jane and I weren't quite sure why September, other than maybe it took a while to get the numbers together. But thanks to Mary Jane, we were able to bring this to you in August. So we have a lot to thank Mary Jane for. So Mary Jane.
Well, and Inga worked with me on every paragraph in it. So, and all the work that it represented. So thanks all around. I thought I would approach it in 2 chunks and first look back at how we did last year, and then perhaps take your questions on that part if you should have any. And then after that, turn to the 2021-22 plan and again, take questions. I've had a frog in my throat all afternoon, so let me apologize in advance if that, I'm probably now ensuring that it's not going to bother me by mentioning it. The plan was kind of organized around 3 categories of goals: revenue, activity, and infrastructure. Revenue and activity are the measurements by which it's pretty logical to judge a fund development program, and infrastructure is something that always needs to be worked on. First of all, our financial objective was to increase dollars raised by 10% over what we raised in 2019-20. And we're basing it on what we've called our baseline, which is a word that we're using to represent total contributions raised minus the bequests. This year, the bequest income wasn't enormous. Last year, it was, the previous year, it was enormous. So it just seems clearer and less, there's less oscillation that kind of muddies the water to take those out. So I could refer you to attachment 1 on page 26 if you'd like to follow there. And I'm suggesting it just so that I'm not going through a blur of numbers, and I think it's easier to see it if it's laid out. Before I start, please note a couple little typos on the chart that the chair of our trustees happened to spot with his supervision, which are 2 floating, two instances of asterisks in the top row of the chart that they had meaning at one time. They were paired with footnotes, and then when the footnotes were removed, they didn't disappear. So ignore that. Thank you for calling that out. So for 2019-20, total giving was, wait, I'm losing my place. So right, was $300,000, but when the bequests were removed, it gave us that baseline of 156,863, which was the number on which we applied the 10% goal increase, giving us a target of 172,549. And we happily exceeded that goal, raising an adjusted total of $223,146, which represented a 35% increase over the goal and a 48.6% increase over the previous year's baseline. If we were to have included the bequests that we received in 2021, which were a $14,300 bequest from the Chandler family and a $2,000 bequest from someone named Rosalind Flyer, the full total would have been $249,470. In the area of activity, in the arena of activity, objectives that we did achieve last year included 2 direct mail appeals, and annual fund report, and donor listing. I think we acquitted ourselves well on stewarding our gifts as promptly and meaningfully as possible. And we looked for opportunities and seized them when we could for publicity. And we sought grant opportunities. We weren't able to apply for everything that we were tempted to apply for, but had success with 3 grants. There were 3 activity objectives which were not able to be fully met last year. We'd hoped to sponsor 2 virtual events about financial planning or charitable giving, and though we had one that was on the calendar for April, our presenter was forced to cancel because of a family medical situation, and we weren't able to really have the bandwidth to identify and produce a replacement program. We'd set as a goal to meet or speak with all donors of $1,000 or more, and as many donors as possible of $250 to $999 in that range. And we didn't quite ace that, but we were able to either meet with or send highly customized, personalized stewardship communications with 13 of our donors at the 1K level and approximately 12 of the donors in the next category down above $250. We had set an objective of initiating some special stewardship attention for donors who have given so faithfully year after year without fail, to recognize their loyalty and cement their loyalty, and to cultivate planned gifts. We have a significant number that I think I detailed in the plan that have given for 10 years, for 15 years and up. And these weren't achieved. We just ran out of bandwidth, and I'm hoping that this can be a future priority. These regular donors, even if they are individuals who make tiny gifts, are time and time again the donors who end up creating a planned gift. There's just a lot of data on the correlation between those two groups. So it's not just donors with a lot of zeros after their gift sizes that you want to tend to. Loyalty is really important. And so third and last, in the area of improving our infrastructure, we set a goal of increasing the number of gift transactions to 500, which would have been a 10% increase, 9.6% from 2019-2020. And let's see, I want to note at this point on the bottom of packet page 21 that there is just a typo in the last bullet at the bottom of that page, under infrastructure objectives, where we say attract support from more donors, increasing the number of gift transactions, blah, blah, blah. We should have written there fiscal year 2019-2020. So just want to eliminate any confusion there. And as you can also see on that attachment, which was on packet page 26 that you were looking at a moment ago, where we've also noted the number of gift transactions, that we saw a really healthy increase to 802, which is 76% increase. So that's thrilling. We had set an objective, partly because the Library Strategies report had recommended it, of developing a means of recording and tracking planned gifts. And we didn't accomplish this within the confines of the database. Truthfully, it's pretty simple at this point to track this is not an excuse, but it is pretty simple to track our planned gifts because there's very few that we're aware of. One thing that we did do to make sure that we were, we have captured them on a spreadsheet and we have full data about each of them. But there's no fancy record keeping that, has actuarial tables, or I'm not actually sure precisely what Library Strategies had in mind. We have taken care to steward them as part of the newly kind of refreshed 1849 Legacy Society, which historically, as I know you all know, had been a giving club of donors who had contributed $1,849 or more to the endowment, and that we last year, as I know you know, morphed that group into the 1849 Legacy Society and welcomed into it individuals who had created planned gifts, giving us one group to try to steward and note and recognize. And those of you who've taken time in the lobby since we reopened have noticed I imagine that we refreshed the 1849 plaque that had been on the wall that faces Pacific Grove. I guess that's, anyway. And have included all of our bequest and endowment donors on that. And creating a menu of giving opportunities for major gifts. We certainly did that as part of the launch of the campaign. And earlier this afternoon, a little after 2, Inga sent you a one-pager of our current giving opportunities, which is actually pretty similar to something you saw at the last meeting in July. And I don't, maybe we'll, even though I said I'd sort of like questions, if we could wait till after. It's worth pointing out that Marcia had some questions about the laptop program and what that $30,000. I don't have it in front of me.
35, Mary Jane.
Yeah,
I've got-
and I did look at my notes hurriedly and see that, Inga, you and I had some thinking that we needed to not just purchase the laptops, but needed to deal with licenses and with staffing. So we may want to revisit that number, but it's kind of a placeholder anyway. We successfully identified a means of accepting stock gifts, and the Friends and Foundation treasurer kindly set up an account with TD Ameritrade, and we have prepared all the necessary marketing to explain why this is an attractive way of making gifts, and create a sample letter of instruction for a donor's broker, electronic transfer instructions, and the like. Fortunately, we haven't been able to road test them yet. We had one inquiry from a donor about midway through the fiscal year, someone who wanted to make a gift of appreciated securities, but we haven't had that gift come through later, but we have built it and they will come, so confident. We worked with Friends and Foundation Development Committee, which has been very helpful to Inga and to me, to create the campaign case statement and talking points for volunteer solicitors to talk to their friends and neighbors about making a gift to the campaign, and full information on the Friends and Foundation website and more abbreviated on the library's website. And then last, as you know, we launched the campaign Monterey Learns quietly in September of 2020, and immediately after, we'd formed a fund development committee that's a committee of the Friends and Foundation, and over the course of the year maintained campaign momentum that included all of the regular work that we did on our appeals and things that we would do otherwise, but also staffing the fund development committee, which met, I think, 6 times over the course of the year, and doing some historic analysis of what we'd raised over time in the past to come up with a goal that had some principles on which we were basing it instead of pulled out of the air, and all the campaign documents and hypothetical gift tables and prospect lists and the whole 9 yards that goes along with a campaign effort. When we could see that our campaign goal of $200,000 was going to be met in this last June, the Friends and Foundation Development Committee endorsed a new goal of $300,000 at its May meeting. And as of yesterday, August 25th, we stand at just over $243,000. So that's last year.
So did you say you'd like to stop at this point and ask for questions?
Sure, I thought that was a mouthful and a good time to stop.
Plus, you could have a glass of water if you need one.
Thank you.
Any questions from board members? Marcia?
I guess it's a question of Mary Jane. I looked at all of the work that's being done by a half-time person, and I was thinking to myself as I read it, if there were someone to pick up a lot of the clerical work that you have to do, you would probably be able to be much more effective. And then I got to the bottom, which says recruit and hire a part-time fund development assistant. And it seems to me that that would be, I wanted to ask you to comment on how helpful that would be to even maybe one day a week have somebody come in and do the database stuff and the clerical stuff and all that.
I think it would be very helpful, particularly during those periods of time, most notably at the end of the year, really November and December, when there's so many gifts to enter. But also during, for example, the Friends and Foundation membership campaign. Membership campaigns are kind of noted for, there's just a little bit of extra fussy detail that goes along with them. And so during those periods, it would be great. We are, Inga and I spoke about this today, and are trying to figure out how quickly we can move on listing the job, because it's going to be clear. It's became clear recently that we had to relist it. We looked back at the pool that we had actually made an offer out of last, I don't know, I guess, was it 2 Marches ago? Was pre-COVID. And we tried to see if we could pick up some of what we'd done with that recruitment rather than start from square zero, but it looks like we'll be starting from square zero. There's a lot of training involved. So we're being careful about thinking through when we bring someone on and how to train them.
Right, but I would think, if I could respond, just some part-time, even some part-time help to do that kind of work would free up your time, because it looks like you folks have done an amazing job. I mean, these numbers, these percentages are really stunning, and it's great. So
Couple of
trying to do that without any clerical help is pretty amazing.
Couple of things. One is it's 10 hours of help that's in the budget for the current fiscal year. I also wanted to say that Francesca is, really shares a lot of this yoke with me, doing, well, all of the printing and generating of the acknowledgements, which is a significant amount of work and needs to be done regularly. And development is all about the customization. So there are often tweaks and special requests with, it's not a bunch of standard thank you notes. So she's finds time in her already entirely full schedule to do that and other expert advice areas with the database, such as pulling some of the reports that I'm not confident of myself doing. So I really want to give kudos to her. What was my last point? There was something else about, the stunning numbers. They are stunning numbers, but on some level, I feel like we just kind of cleaned up our act a little bit and introduced kind of discipline and as I think I said somewhere, we always try to apply a campaign thinking to the database so that make sure you spend quality, you want to spend 80% of your time with 20% of your bigger donors, that sort of thing. So I just think that the library's brand is so spectacular and it has such a great case to make for the whole peninsula, and because of its history, that some of this happened. It's just a great library, so it doesn't happen magically. But
you also mentioned that it didn't help to be desperate, and in this year it was very clear to everybody that we were desperate. And so when we're not quite so desperate, it may not, people may slack off a bit. But to steward all those people who jumped in had never gone to get, who were so moved by the desperate plight of a library that had no book budget, I think that helped.
Very good. Any other clarifying questions at this point? Bob?
One of the things I wanted to mention was, it turns out to be a follow-up of what Marcia was asking about. In your, at the top of packet page 24, you talk about future staffing, and you talk about making the fund development coordinator both full-time and non-interim. And right now you are not full-time, but you are interim. And I would think that the first step toward making this whole setup more permanent is to remove the interim tag on it. And then if there's funding to increase it to full-time and or add the administrative assistant position that we've talked about just a second ago. I mean, I would be 100% in favor of that stepping stone toward having a ongoing fund development staff rather than it being, you know, always part-time, always interim. We're not sure how long it's going to last and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So sort of a comment. Other comment is, unfortunately, you weren't able to do the virtual programs that you were talking about. But as we'll see once again, when we look at our statistic report at the end of this meeting, you'll see how overwhelmingly popular the virtual remote adult programs have been. And this would certainly be of that type of program. And so I guess I would just, from my point of view, strongly urge you to re-pursue making these programs that you weren't able to do, these virtual programs available, because the adults just seem to be, you'll see when we talk about those statistics later on, they just seem to be falling over themselves to participate in the remote programs that we're offering. And this would be one that would not only satisfy the interest of a lot of individuals, but, you know, start adding to our base, hopefully, of contributors.
Yeah.
And my last thing is just a quick question, yes or no, from when you were talking about setting up a mechanism for people to donate appreciated stocks and securities. Is that in fact in place now? Somebody can do that, or it's in the process of being made available, or what?
No, we don't have proof of concept with a gift coming through it, but if you went right now to www.investinmpl.org/ways of giving or ways to give, there's a page with a bunch of different options, and one of them is making a gift of stock.
And is one of them, I haven't looked at it recently, but is one of them also, I believe if a person is old enough where they have to take required minimum withdrawals from an IRA, that if they designate those withdrawals to go to a charity, then it becomes a non-taxable withdrawal, as opposed to an imposed taxable withdrawal of a certain percentage once they read what is 70.5 or something.
Or as Jim told me 2 years ago when I got the date wrong, I think now it's 72.5. But I think that there's not a dedicated area for it, but I think it's referred to as, but you know what? I will definitely look at that, because that's a wonderful way for people who want to avoid taxes to make sure that their broker or their custodian who holds their IRA sends part of their distribution or all of their distribution directly to us, rather than.
Well, I think that's especially true now that a lot of people, because of the revision to the income tax code a couple of years ago, I mean, a lot of people made donations of appreciated stock so that they wouldn't have to pay capital gains tax if they sold it. Plus, they can get a donation amount as an itemized deduction, right? But now, and just speaking personally, to be honest, the itemized deductions, especially in the medical area, they just don't add up enough. And so the thing out of the IRA might be a much more attractive way for people to make a donation to a charity a donation that is ultimately free of taxes. Even better than donating securities has been in the past.
I'll check the website, and also maybe we can include a tasteful blurb in an e-blast, or try some other marketing.
Yeah,
I think people are less aware of that option as well, compared to people that are saying, oh, I can just give stock and not have to pay on what I would make by selling it. I think more people are aware of that than the IRA donation.
Yeah, I would just like to second Bob's comments that I think there is a lot of people that are not fully aware of that, and that it might be beneficial to them. People that are subject to the required minimum distribution, which now for people born after a certain age is now age 72, not 72 and a half, just to correct the record on that. There's actually some legislation that would increase that to age 75 over a period of 10 years, but that has not passed Congress yet. So at this point, it is 72. I think maybe I'll hold off on asking for public input until we've completed the second part of your report, Mary Jane, unless you think there's a benefit in asking for public input at this point.
Not at all, and this will be much quicker.
Okay, good.
Thank you. If you'll glance at that same chart on packet page 26, our financial objective we've set at, again, increasing dollars by 10%, which might seem like kind of underwhelming after such large increases in the last 2 fiscal years. But I think it's sound for a number of reasons that I've listed out on packet pages 23 and 24, and I'll just hop through a couple of them really quickly. Goal settings generally based on a 3 to 5 year rolling average. But if we look back 3 years ago, I think we were making, let's see, 5 years ago, total receipts were just $109,000 in the year. And in 2018-19, funds raised actually dipped from the previous year of 2017-2018. So it just feels like we might be getting we could get out over our skis if we imagine that we can keep the goals if we were to try to embrace a larger goal. There's, I think, the uncertainty that Marcia mentioned about, the initial emergency of the pandemic, the city budget being so drastically affected, the staff layoffs and the closure, that created quite it garnered us a lot of attention, but we'll have to see what kind of ongoing attention we're able to sustain from the philanthropic community on the peninsula, what kind of other social crises and concerns come into their awareness. And just what our economy and our world will be doing, generally speaking. And the other question that I have is, into an uncertain future, how fully will the Friends and Foundation decide, or not decide, how fully will they kind of embrace the culture of, I won't even call it major gift fundraising, but individual fundraising. They've certainly, have I think the library strategies report referred to, and I remember one meeting I attended before I joined the staff, we were cautioned by library strategies that the cultural piece is always the tricky piece with a change like the Friends becoming the Friends and Foundation. There's also some kind of relaxation, I will call it, after a campaign. You've built up this awareness of something that has a beginning, a middle, an end, and a goal, and you can't kind of sustain that forever. So you hope to have a new normal plateau that's higher than what that's permanently higher, but there's often a relaxation after a campaign concludes. I don't know if that'll happen with us or not. And then, just as others have already mentioned, that we're kind of, it's a cloudy picture of what the future is in terms of staffing and resources. Activity objectives, most are similar to last year's, excuse me, and they're listed on packet page 24. We do plan to produce another state of library event, in addition to the 2 appeals and an annual report and the basic block and tackle. We'd like to hold a stewardship event to celebrate the campaign's conclusion and recognize all donors. I'm hoping down to a pretty low level, down to $250, which is not a low level. What am I saying? But just to make the point that I'm not seeing it as an elite event, but a very inclusive one. Really would like to create a dedicated circle of giving circle for donors who have given so loyally, as we were speaking about earlier. And I want to plan programs for financial planning and charitable giving. So that needs to be added in as well. As far as the infrastructure, I think holding on to and slightly increasing, if possible, the number of newly acquired donors is job one. Creating some language, case statement, and giving opportunities for use in the post-campaign future that seems fresh, doesn't seem stale, and is motivating to donors. Produce documentation for gift administration and acknowledgement, including how to track and report on gifts. We don't really have that kind of manual now, and it will really help going forward. And if possible, simplifying the process of producing gift and donor reports. And in conclusion, I just feel like there's so much possibility in the future for our beloved library, and so I'm optimistic. Thank you.
Well, very good. Thank you for a very thorough and helpful report, and also for the hard work that went into the results, the outstanding results that have been achieved. Before we go to public input, let's ask for any clarifications or any trustees of the report or the presentation here today. Bob, is your hand up? Okay, thank you. Jennifer.
Not a clarification or question, just kudos. It's really impressive watching those numbers climb and seeing all that has been accomplished. So thank you, and thank you to all of our volunteers and donors.
Yes. Okay, well, I think we all may have a few additional comments, but let's hold those until after public input. Francesca, could you see if there's any public input on item number 5?
Yes, to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. If you are connected by the telephone, please dial *9. And Chair Thompson, there are no public comments at this time.
Okay, very good. Then I'd suggest let's focus our discussion on the 2 different parts of this report. The first being the 2021 fund development plan, the evaluation and the summary of that. Any additional comments? There's no action required on this. It's just to receive this report. But are there further comments on that? I know I have some, but I'll let other trustees speak first if they have any comments. No? Well, then I just wanted to add my kudos to everyone involved in this. And I wanted to specifically call out Mary Jane, but also Francesca for all the work you did. Francesca has done to help, and of course, Inga in overseeing it all. And the Friends and Foundation, I think have done a magnificent job of switching gears from the Friends to the Friends and Foundation, and that's not an easy transition to make. And I particularly wanted to thank the Fund Development Committee of the Friends and Foundation, and a shout out in particular to Bill Wachowski, the chair of that Fund Development Committee. I think he's been responsible for quite a few of the gifts here, and so I wanted to acknowledge him. And also Harish, I know, was part of that committee for a while, so I wanted to thank him and all the other members of the Fund Development Committee as well. So any other board comments on the first part of this, the 2021 results? If not, then let's move on to the second item, which is an action item, which is the proposed FY 21-22 plan. Any further board comments or questions on that? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the plan as submitted.
So move.
I'll second that.
So Jennifer made the motion and Harish seconded. Any further board discussion? Seeing none, Francesca, would you call the roll?
Yes, trustee Joshi,
Yes,
trustee Moreau,
Yes,
trustee Petty.
Yes.
Thank you, Vice Chair Felguth
Yes.
and Chair Thompson.
Yes, thank you very much. Motion carries unanimously. Then moving on to item number 6, receiving the quarterly museums and cultural arts activities report. That's one we decided we'd quarterly get an update on that,
Right.
and to save some staff time to basically receive the reports that go to that commission. But did you have any additional overview, Inga, that you'd like to make?
Well, on packet page 28, I listed a few of the highlights from this period, and so I'll just mention them now. So one of the highlights is that I'm working with our artifact specialist, Jordan Leninger, on a Buffalo Soldiers exhibit for the Presidio, and he's actually doing the brunt of that research. Then also, we were successful in hiring back 2 of our museum attendants so that we could reopen Colton Hall in time for the 4th of July weekend. And we worked on planning and coordinating the volunteers for the Pacific Biological Laboratories. And the wonderful volunteer who had agreed to coordinate that unfortunately passed away right after we discussed that option. And that was Mike Giordano, who had been really such an advocate for the Pacific Biological Lab. So we were very lucky to have another volunteer step in, and now we've been open twice now, once in July and once in August. And the community is just very appreciative that PBL is open again for tours on the 2nd Saturday of the month. And then finally, the big work that happened for the committee during this period, I think, is deciding what to do with some materials that had been kept in storage since 1997, over 100 objects. And so there was a subcommittee formed, and then there were many visits out to a warehouse in Fort Ord. And we've just about wrapped up the disposition of those objects, and it involved council action. So that was the quarter in brief, and I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Very good. Thank you, Inga. Any board member questions? Bob?
Looking back at that where Inga was reading from the highlights list on back at page 28, I believe where it says highlights from, I want to know where the back quarter is. Because that's the 4th quarter. There must be a back and 4th quarter, right, somewhere.
Sorry, missing a you there. Thank you.
Okay.
For those that don't know what Bob's talking about, there's a typo in the word 4th that instead of F-O-U-R-T-H, it's F-O-R-T-H, and that's the back and forth that he's referring to. Thank you.
I assume we haven't gotten so far down the line that people wouldn't pick that up. So
Good.
Anyhow, other than that, very good summary report.
Very good. Any other questions? Then Francesca, could you see if there's any public comment on this item?
Yes, to make a public comment on Zoom, please raise your hand. If you are connected by phone, dial *9 to raise your hand. There are no public comments at this time.
Thank you, Francesca. Any further comment on this item? It's just to receive this report, so no action is necessary. Seeing none, that's the end of the public appearance items, and now we'll move on to informational reports and staff comments. Starting with item number 7, to receive the financial report, which starts on packet page 41. Inga, is there anything you'd like to summarize about the financial report?
I don't have anything to say about the financial report, but since this is under the opportunity for staff to make comments, I did want to let you know that I do have a comment that I want to share at some point.
Okay, I'll recognize you after we've done items 7 and 8 for any staff comments you might have at that point.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. So any trustee questions about item number 7, the financial report? Marcia.
I just had a question on the trust fund expenditures. The $27,000, it says 100% of support services expended. I wasn't quite sure what that was. You know, most of it, the percent spent is about right for the fiscal year, the time of the fiscal year, but then you've got this 100,000, the 100% there. I just didn't know what it was.
Yes, Inga, do you know, was that related to the RFID or anything like that?
That's the rollover of, we paid for half of the RFID in the previous fiscal year, and then we rolled over the balance into this fiscal year. And so that's how it's listed.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that was the payment for the RFID. Okay, great.
It's actually the money set aside for the payment. Mhm.
Then another question was on packet page 43 about the 699.3%. The last figure on the right from the library trust fund, it says library administration 699.3% balance revenue.
So that's revenue that's been taken in. So I believe that's something that we're going to have to correct because they show that we anticipated taking in $5,400.
And I see you took in 37,000 instead.
Exactly.
Weird. Yeah. Well, it looks great.
But the $5,400 may be low. Is that correct, Inga?
Right. The 5,400 is usually how much we estimate that we're going to take in from photocopiers and archival reproductions. So I think what happened is that the finance department didn't add in the amount that we always estimate for contributions.
Oh, I see. I see.
So the 5,400 perhaps should have been under the general fund instead of under the trust fund, and a different number there for the trust fund. Is that right?
No, so the general fund, so according to the city charter, all of the funds that are collected by the library, except for fines, do go into the trust fund.
Okay, that's right. Thank you for that correction. And that 25,100 under reader services is actually the fines.
Correct, in the general fund, yes.
Right, very good. Okay, good. Any other questions on this item? If not, Francesca, could you see if there's any public comment on item number 7?
Yes, to make a public comment on Zoom, please raise your hand. If you are connected by phone, dial *9. This time there are no public comments, Chair Thompson.
Very good. Any concluding comments or questions on the financial report? Seeing none, let's move on to item number 8, which is the statistical report. Is there anything you'd like to highlight on item number 8, Inga?
Well, I did want to mention that per discussion that we had previously, we're going to be including 2 pages of statistics. We're going to be showing you the month that has just passed and compare it to a year ago. And then we're going to take that previous, the year ago month and compare it to the previous month. So in other words, we should have shown you July 21 compared to July 20, year 20, and then July of 2020 compared to July of 2019. But there was a slip on the keyboard, I guess, and instead we gave you June is the second attachment. So apologies for that, and we'll do it correctly in the future. The other thing I wanted to mention is that after discussing what statistics to present to the board, you had asked for some new statistics to be provided for computer use, and so we've added those. So if you look just about halfway down the page under public computer and internet usage, we're now showing you wired public computer sessions and wireless sessions, and then wired public computer usage and wireless usage. So we've added that for you.
If I could just add to that, on the August through July 2019 through 20, the summary for the entire year, it's actually 3.2 million minutes of wireless usage. And I think this is the first time I've seen a number in the millions on the statistical report. So I just wanted to highlight that that is a lot of minutes. Anything else you'd like to highlight, Inga?
No, that was it.
Good. And Bob, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, not a question. I just wanted to point out again that while a number of the figures year to year are lower, understandably, because we were closed and everything and weren't doing as many things as we normally would to attract attendance. Nevertheless, the remote programs that were directed toward adults were extraordinarily successful. And just as Jim said, he's never seen a number as big as 3 million. I don't think I've ever seen a number as big as an increase in something positive of 787%. So I think this just continually points out how important continuing that type of program that we were more or less forced into doing, to the extent that we did it the last year and a half, but continuing it in the future, because you know, if you attract people that are happy with the kind of programming, then I think Mary Jane would agree that that often leads to happy patrons means happy donors.
Let's hope so. Other comments or questions? If not, Francesca, could we see if there's any public input on item number 8?
Yes, to make a public comment on Zoom, please raise your Zoom hand. If you are connected by phone, dial *9. This time there are no public comments, Chair Thompson.
Thank you, Francesca. Any other discussion on item number 8, the statistical report? If not, then the other aspect of this particular item, the informational reports and staff comments, is any additional verbal reports that the director might want to make. Inga.
Yes, thank you. So this actually relates to the statistic that Trustee Petty just pointed to about public attendance at adult programs during July. So we had a very robust adult summer reading program this year, thanks to a grant that Francesca Garibaldi applied for, the Book to Action grant. And what I wanted to do, so it was a wonderful program with a series of book discussions and a couple of other lectures as well. And what I wanted to do is publicly acknowledge the steering committee that worked on this project under Francesca, and that is Elaine Gehrman, Laurel Lee Alexander, J.T. Mason, and Leslie Mason. So without their help and their support, it would not have been such an amazing program. And I think you'll have seen from reading through the comments that were provided in the read packet that it made a big difference for people that were able to participate in the program. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And my compliments as well to everyone involved in putting on that program. If there are no other staff reports, then let's move on to trustee comments and start with Trustee Petty.
I just want to note again what others have mentioned, which is how moving the furniture around a bit has made the interior of the library feel so much more spacious. And it almost made me feel like we had taken care of the first option from G4, which was not to do any building, but to do some rearranging. And maybe that's the first step toward minor or major reconstruction, but it sure has made a positive difference. And it maybe is a bright side of what's coming out of this whole COVID and our having to shut down, because that, I think, is what initially prompted us to do it at this point in time. And anyhow, it's very nice.
Very good. Thank you, Bob. Trustee Mora.
I just want to say how happy I am to see the library open and how great it looks. I second that, and also to thank Francesca and everyone for the Book to Action program this summer was wonderful, and I think it kind of raised the programming of the library to the next level, and that's wonderful. So thank you.
Very good. And Trustee Joshi.
Just wanted to say how enjoyable it was to work on this RFID project. I'm very happy it went through as well as it did. And if anybody has ideas on what we can do next technology-wise, I'd be very happy to hear about that.
Very good. Very good. Vice Chair Felgut.
Yes, I again want to commend staff and Mary Jane and her crew for keeping us afloat and continuing to offer not only a quality service, but improving the plant itself, the inside of the library, the building. I'll be interested in another month to see how we're doing as far as the current COVID surge. I just want to make sure that our patrons and our staff stay safe and stay well. So thank you.
Very good. And I have two comments to finish the meeting off. One, I neglected previously when we had the final RFID committee report to formally thank both Harish and also Inga for all the work you did on that, with, of course, great assistance from David and other staff. And so that's the completion of that ad hoc committee. And so at this point, we're down to one ad hoc committee, which is the survey committee. But I'm envisioning another committee or two that I'll probably announce at the next meeting. And then the second thing, I wanted to just acknowledge that this is our first hybrid meeting. And I thought it went pretty smoothly, since we weren't quite sure how this would work out. And that's mainly because of all the work that Inga and Francesca did getting ready for this meeting. So I wanted to publicly thank them for getting all the logistics of making this happen and making it seem quite smooth. And also wanted to thank Kim for making sure our video was audible. So thank you to the staff for all the logistics of making these meetings possible. And with that, we'll adjourn this meeting to our September meeting. Thank you very much.